Have you ever been romantically involved with a sociopath? ASPD diagnosed? If so, is it actually a traumatizing experience? What is it like? A friend of mine dated a diagnosed sociopath, and she said it was frustrating because there wasn't any logic behind her attraction to him. She realized he was not good to her, but she couldn't stop going back to him. She described him as both the best and worst thing in her life when she was with him. I totally know what your friend is coming from. After reading this thread, I'm very suspicious that my ex may really be a sociopath. He claimed he had BPD, then admitted he also had paranoid personality disorder, but I think it was just another lie and he uses BPD as a disguise. It was extremely traumatic when it was all said and done, but part of getting over him was accepting that I do truly love him. He just can't be in my life because he is so bad to slash for me. Edit. I am not, nor have I ever been in a romantic relationship with my brother. I misread the post me twin brother. Things happened when we were little. I wouldn't have linked up then, but I most certainly do now. As twins, we obviously got two of everything. He'd destroy his, take mine and then say I destroyed mine to get his thing because it was better somehow. He hugged the family cat so hard it panted when he let go every time. Once he mysteriously found the cat with a broken leg and decided not to tell my mom. He was just constantly trying to cause chaos, pinning everyone in the house against each other. He would start arguments seemingly for the fun of it, and he'd always find a way to slip into the background while we screamed at each other. His worst offense was when he cut himself on the leg with a razor and told my mom dad had made him do it. My parents nearly got divorced because of him. Then they did for other reasons. He told me a while later he lied about it all. He liked doing that, ducking things up and only telling me. I was branded as a liar for most of my childhood and no one really trusted anything I said because of him. So he took all the more delight in confiding in me because he knew what it would do. He lives with my dad now, and I haven't spoken to him in 4 years. But I have a fun story. If people ask who the evil twin is, I guess. Your edit made me laugh. Thanks. He was a classic. Into animal torture and stuff like that. The way he got to talk endlessly about animal torture was by pretending he felt bad for it and looking for sympathy. I can't believe I did X and Y. I feel so bad. He kept mentioning it so much. He thought it was funny when me or the baby had pain. At one point he told me that it was so long ago that by now I should also think it was funny that he had gotten my blood and pieces of my flesh on him. He said that me having empathy was proof that I was mentally ill. Because empathy doesn't exist. You just learn in your teens that there's consequences for being bad to other people. He also said that nobody cares about women. They're like steak in the supermarket, and that when he saw a woman in the streets, he thought about raping them. He is incredibly charismatic and the police said that I made a false report. He is still harassing me through the legal system. My ex was never diagnosed formally, but often told me he was probably a sociopath. I think the charismatic tendencies is what really gets to me the most. I thought I was so special because he was so confident in himself. He could do no wrong. He always said everything with such confidence you felt stupid to question it. I was young, and he was the first person to show interest in me that I thought was also really smart. He killed animals too. Would often tell me about how he wanted to kill every species at least once. Fantasized about being able to kill someone. Beat my parents' dog for months because he left food on the counter, which we said not to because the dog eats it. And when I threatened to break up with him if he didn't stop beating the dog, he looked at the dog coldly and said, "If you break up with me over that stupid dog, you'll kill him." I was so scared, so miserable. He isolated me away from all of my friends and family, yet we would be able to see his friends and family. If I spoke about something, I would get yelled at on the way home. I would lock myself in the bedroom to avoid him yelling at me. But he would break lock just to yell at me more. Every time I tried to break up with him it was, "I'll kill myself, comma, I'll kill the dog, comma, you'll never be able to find someone as good as me, comma, I'll spend every last dime you have." Cheated on me constantly, blamed me for cheating, was just so obsessed with himself, turned into an entirely different person sexually. After a few years of us dating, he went from being dominating, which I liked, into actually wanting me to peg him, humiliate him, etc. I once roleplayed about someone breaking him and tying him to the chair and forcing him to watch someone rape me, and he could not stop thinking about it. Every time we did anything intimate it would turn into that. He tried to convince me to let someone else duck me in front of him, but I ultimately bailed out because I felt it was so wrong. So he screamed at me in a bar because any girl would be lucky to have their boyfriend say it's okay to sleep with someone else. No, he had to pick out the person. He picked out what I would wear, how I would do my makeup, what we ate, everything. It came to a point where I threatened to break up enough where he finally found it hilarious and said, oh yeah, think you can do it on your own? Then do it. Quit a job and stopped paying rent while still living under my roof for months. Drained my savings completely. It's been about 2 years since I was finally free and I still have dreams of him refusing to leave. I luckily have a gun in these dreams and I shoot the son of a bitch. And I stopped dreaming for a while, but now he's back in my brain, haunting me yet again. It was traumatizing. I felt like I was losing my mind from the casual cruelty and gaslighting. Took forever for me to trust obvious truths again, since he was skilled at maliciously twisting them. 0.3. Would not recommend. Yes, he admitted his diagnosis proudly, at least to me. He was very troubled. I was only with him 8 months, but those 8 months were the worst of my life. He seemed happy to discover I didn't have stable housing. Asked if I'd like to move in. I said no. So he started causing problems with the people I was crashing with. I didn't realize this till later, that he was the one that got me kicked out. Once I had no choice but to stay with him. Hotels or the streets. He laughed and said he's breaking his lease. Maybe if I did what he said faster, I'd be able to stay, but that I could sleep in his basement. He would do weird shit like that, making me wait outside of bars. His job, his friends' houses was a big thing he'd make me do, especially if the weather was poor. When he drank it was even worse. I'd sleep in the bathroom if he was on liquor to get away from him. If I didn't, he'd strangle me when he blacked out. He's wanted for killing a girl in another country now. No clue where he is, but I'll randomly get contacted by him. It's been years, but he still contacts me. All he says is I love you. Once he got into my email and changed my name to I love you. I know 100% it's him. I've seen and been through a lot of ducked up shit in my life. It is what it is. But that man takes the ducking cake for the most awful experience in my entire life. There are people I meet or see on TV that have the same exact look in their eyes or voice pattern as him, despite looking nothing like him. I avoid those people like the plague or grunt to turn the TV off. It's like they over enunciate certain points of words yet have a monotone voice. The letter T especially, like they are parroting a human. Not actually one thing he always did was watch YouTube videos and practice in the mirror on how to look happy, sad, concerned. It was insane. Everyone thought he was the greatest guy on earth. His mother tried to warn me that he'd kill me. Ducked up. Edit. Can people stop DM me begging for me to watch YouTube clips until I find one that reminds me of him? It's not something I can do. Him done answering questions about this. It's getting to be gross also. The incels sending I love you. I know it isn't him, because he doesn't send it in English. Nice try though. Edit. Please consult a professional if you believe you or an ex/loved one etc has ASPD. Diagnosing a serious mental illness yourself is not healthy and further pushes misinformation and stigmas. It seems a lot of people think narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder are the same thing as well. There are people I meet or see on TV that have the same exact look in their eyes or voice pattern as him, despite looking nothing like him. I avoid those people like the plague or grunt to turn the TV off. It's like they over enunciate certain points of words yet have a monotone voice. The letter T especially, like they are parroting a human. Not actually one. This part gave me chills. I haven't been romantically involved with a psychopath, but my father is one. And in my core, I know what you're describing here. I'm very happy for you that you're away from him and in a much safer place now. Yes, I dated a narcissistic sociopath. It was terrible and left permanent scars. It took time, but I realize now that everything was a lie. Well, his name was correct, but what he thought, felt, did, his plans and his history, I know none of those things. He is a complete stranger, and I never knew him at all. I'm doing fine now, although once in a while I stop and shake my head because I feel so goddamn dumb. My ex is a walking illusion. He was whatever he needed to be at the moment to reel in his victim. Even after I filed for divorce, it wasn't until I heard the pathological lies that he told his new girlfriend that I realized it. There wasn't any diagnosis, but I was casually with a guy who was sending up some pretty serious red flags, and it suddenly clicked that he was a sociopath. No empathy, would absolutely lie to people's faces. Huge plans that went nowhere. Nothing was ever his fault. Rules were for other people. When I drifted away from him or hung out with someone else, he would start putting lots of effort in again. And of course there was the cheating, lying, etc etc. Luckily for me, I had recognized it early, and I realized I needed to be careful about how I went about detaching myself from him. So here is what I did, and hopefully it can help someone. I never actually broke things off with him, or told him we were done. Obviously this only works if you're casual, but maybe some variation could work. So an example would be that when he asked me for something, I knew he wanted it right then. So whenever he contacted me to ask for something, I'd say sure, that sounds great. I get off of work in 3 hours and he'll come right over with whatever he wanted. After that, he'd say no, never mind. I'd act like I was disappointed about it. So he thought he had successfully punished me. He thought I was still on the hook. I'd do this over and over until he stopped thinking of me as someone he could get things from. It took a while and a lot of acting upset when he would berate me or snap at me. I specifically remember sitting in his room while he yelled at me about where I put my purse down, thinking, okay, remember V. This is very upsetting. Look sad. But it did work without him going to any extremes. And we lived in the same building, so it was hard to just avoid him altogether. Obviously your mileage may vary. I dated a guy who wanted total control 24/7. I got sick a lot and had a lot of medical tests because they couldn't figure out what was wrong. I got really boring and too sick to go anywhere, so he broke it off. Yup, by far the hardest experience of my life was with him for nearly a year. 6 years ago. Still working on recovery today. Tried to separate me from my friends and family. Made me feel responsible for him emotionally and financially. One of the first things he did after about a week of dating was convince me to pay for his $400 phone bill so he could have his phone switched back on and stay in contact with me. That was only the beginning. I lost all self-worth. By the end I felt completely crazy. It's insane what prolonged exposure to gaslighting will do to a person. I ended up dropping out of uni because he would sabotage me at every turn. I'll never forget when I was working on a major project and he would keep walking past me calling me a ducking bitch and spitting on my piece. I was the only one working, and supporting 2 people on a shitty hospitality wage is hard enough. Then add in about a $300 a week weed addiction. If he didn't have it, he would lose his shitty, throw things, smash things etc. It was safer for me to keep him high, and in turn I smoked a shitty load to escape the reality of the situation. I finally got out when I found that he had had prostitutes in the house and in my bed. I finally opened up to my friends what had been happening, and they got me out of there. It was ducked up, but I try to see it in a positive light. I've learned and gained massive self-esteem since this happened, and I find I can easily detect sociopathic and narcissistic personalities, not people now. I still get super triggered by things, especially males yelling or showing aggression. I still get annoyed at myself for breaking down in these situations. But each time it happens I feel myself heal just that little bit. I see it as a wound reopening. But then the scar tissue builds up, making me stronger each time. Sorry for such a long rant. Seeing this question hit me and feels good to get a bit of the stuff off my chest. I don't imagine that it's common for sociopaths to get diagnosed as such. They tend to live in denial. They don't think they have issues worth exploring. Yes, I dated one, and it was the most traumatic experience of my life. By the time it was over, multiple years, I had no idea who he was. That's what it's like. Traumatic. I'm in therapy, but I'm scared of people now. I don't know if I want to get married or have kids. I beat myself up for it because there were so many signs he was a sociopath. But I still wanted him. Even after a few years we first broke up. I ended up catching herpes. He never cared about me and only cared about himself. He used me. I get really mad at myself when I think about it. Even typing this out, my anxiety is slightly hitting me. I learned that I was in love with the idea of being in love and that my self-esteem was so low. It's probably going to be a long time before I trust people again. One of my biggest fears is falling into that again. Even worse, not leaving. I'm thankful that I have family and friends, so that helps me. I don't feel alone. I feel love all the time. I was married to one. It was traumatizing. We had a child and he cheated while I was pregnant with a woman. I specifically said I don't trust her. Please avoid being alone with her when she joined my group. Other friends basically invited her in. He was verbally and mentally abusive. He told me no one would want me because I was a young single mom, so I may as well come home and just let him cheat with whoever he felt like cheating with. I moved across the country to escape his insanity. The best way I learned to deal with him is to ignore him and not give a shit. It messed with his ego big time. He really doesn't know how to deal with someone who actually gives zero shots about him. He would try to tell me about whatever was going on in his life and did say, "Why are you telling me this? I don't care. Don't speak to me unless it's about our son." He kidnapped my child during a visit. Because a divorce was final in our home state, nothing could be done. It took me 2 years of fighting to win full sole custody of my son, who is now grown and doesn't have much to do with his dad. There is of course a lot more to the story. Psychological warfare and such. He tried to make me think I was going crazy when I started to become suspicious. He tried to torture me for 18 years. I haven't spoken to him in 5 years and I feel free. He has been told, if he so much as tries to speak to me at events for my son, graduation, college graduation, military basic training graduation, that I will walk away. I have nothing to say to the man, and he has nothing to say to me. My son learned on his own what type of person his dad is and is remarkably well adjusted and full of empathy. Was married to one for 4 years. Definitely would not repeat. The level of delusion is unreal, and trying to get him to understand someone else's pain, trying to get him to see how his actions would act up, was like trying to force a colorblind person to differentiate red and green. His vast lack of empathy was unyielding. Not even his therapist could make progress, and requested to meet with me for help in getting through to him. He truly lives in a fictional world where he can do no wrong, and it's fucking terrifying. I moved 1,000 miles away first chance I got. You describe it very well. The delusion that they live in is terrifying. They are not in reality. They do not inhabit the same reality that the rest of us do. They really do think that they are the center of everything, and no one/nothing actually exists but them. And woe betide anyone who challenges that. It's like a malignant stuntedness. Like they never fully developed into a real human being. Their consciousness never expanded to include others or the world around them. It just stayed stuck and remained so, focused on themselves forever. My first boyfriend told me on our first date that he was a sociopath, and I don't feel anything, but I sure know I like you. And because I was 16 and naive, I completely fell for it. Q being manipulated into sex. Telling him I struggled with my relationship with food and body image, only to be told I was flabby afterwards. And all the exhausting mind games. Even through all of that and more, I still utterly adored him and repressed all of my instinctual feelings that were telling me to leave. Something I still feel dumb about. I honestly think I was just a toy for him to manipulate and hurt. Something he made sure to tell me about after our relationship ended. The way his face would change from loving to like someone I didn't know was kind of terrifying really. It all ducked me up pretty badly, and I still find it hard to trust people. The way his face would change from loving to like someone I didn't know was kind of terrifying really. That's his mask slipping. I was with a man who was never diagnosed, so I can't say for certain. But even being with someone who had the potential to be was traumatizing. I also had a therapist who said he most likely had antisocial personality disorder, and I told her very little about him. He had me under his control for almost 10 years. I had no friends in college because he made me believe he was my entire world. He made me feel sexually inept so that there were things I was unable to do with later partners. He told me he loved me even though it was something he could not feel because he knew it was something that would make me even more easy to manipulate. He slept with countless women when we were together and then led me to honestly believe it was my fault. If I even spoke to other men we got in a fight. He got me to let him read my journals and then was mad that he made me so depressed. I got pregnant and he asked if he was really the father. My relationship with my fiancé ended because he made me believe I was still in love with him. I felt bad about myself for a long time because I let him treat me so poorly and get away with so much. But the more I read and researched I knew it was not me. I grew as a person and worked on everything holding me down, and now he means nothing to me. I don't hate him, want him, or wish to go back in time. I feel nothing, and it is the most liberating thing I have ever experienced. I was with a boyfriend for a year. Someone I know who is a therapist and was acting as my therapist, but knew me, and my ex well told me that he was a sociopath. I don't believe he was ever diagnosed, but that was good enough for me. I was 19. He was a year older than me. He has a way of talking in circles until I found myself agreeing to things I didn't agree with, but not really sure what had just happened. Gave me whiplash. He gaslighted me constantly and made me feel like I was crazy. I'd end up apologizing for things I never did. The worst was when he tricked me into getting engaged to him. I'm not really sure how it happened because the memory is kind of a blur, but at the end of the conversation he was like, "So, we are engaged now," and I was like, "Hang on, what?" I had no desire to marry him. I was too young and I'd already begun to hate him at that point. But before I had the opportunity to figure out what was going on and how the hell we had just gotten engaged, he announced our engagement to 200 people. People were congratulating me and I just felt so hollow and broken inside. He ended up moving and that's the only way I got free of him. I tried breaking up with him a few times before then, but somehow he always made it seem like I had to stay. The day he moved I blocked him on everything and swore I'd never talk to him again. I still have trauma and am triggered surprisingly frequently, considering it's been over 2 years. But yeah, that's what it's like dating a sociopath. Like this video and this good boy will be your mailman forever. We are Redditation, and we redditate every day. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. Until then, check another video. Or don't. Either way, have a wonderful day you magnificent people.